Before this video begins, if you enjoy my content, please consider supporting on Patreon for as little as $1 a month, and $5 a month will get you early ad-free access to all of my videos. Thank you. In my 11 of the Worst YouTubers video, I discussed Austin Jones, a YouTuber who became famous by uploading song covers. He was even set to perform on the 2015 Warped Tour until it was revealed that he had been messaging underage girls in private and getting them to perform explicit acts for him on camera. There's no denying that he's a scumbag, but his story got me thinking about how there have been other musicians out there far worse than him. So I've decided to list the ones who I consider to be among the most evil. Here are 7 of the most evil musicians. Tim Lambesis is the lead singer of the American metalcore band As I Lay Dying. Despite the band's music being what many religious people would have seen as satanic years ago, Lambesis has always portrayed himself as a devout Christian, often writing about the teachings of Jesus in his music and even having Jesus and a cross tattooed on his body. He also adopted 3 Ethiopian children and really seemed to love them as if they were his own flesh and blood. All in all, Lambesis seemed like a very nice religious man and a loving father. However, as you can probably guess from his inclusion in this video, things obviously took a dark turn. In August 2012, while on tour with As I Lay Dying, Lambesis sent an email to his wife informing her that he no longer loved her, no longer believed in God, and had been having an affair. The two later divorced, with his ex-wife Megan Murphy stating that Lambesis was obsessed with working out at the gym and also wasted thousands of dollars on tattoos. She also stated that he was very negligent towards his children, including in situations that could have been potentially dangerous for them, such as falling asleep while they were playing in the pool. In May 2013, Lambesis was arrested after it had been reported that he had paid $20,000 to hire a hitman to murder his wife. He had apparently asked an acquaintance at the gym if they knew anyone who would kill his wife. Lambesis was referred to a hitman with the codename Red, who asked him if he really wanted his wife dead, to which he replied, "Yes, that's what I want." He then gave Red $1,000 for expenses, pictures of his wife, her address, and the date on which to carry out the hit. He also asked for the hit to be carried out while he was with his children so that he'd have an alibi. However, Red was actually an undercover police officer, and with all the evidence he collected against Lambesis, carried out the arrest on May 7th. Brett, the man who Lambesis had met with at the gym to inquire about hiring a hitman, had actually informed the police of what he was planning, who later told Brett to give Lambesis the number of a sheriff's deputy playing the role of Red. When Lambesis met with Red, he was repeatedly recorded saying he wanted his wife dead. Lambesis pleaded not guilty to the charges, with his lawyer claiming that his thought process had been hampered by his steroid use.
He was more irritable, he was more reactive. He was not the good Christian that was Jesus-like in high school.
In 2014, Lambesis changed his plea to guilty and was sentenced to 6 years in prison.
A popular Christian rock singer from Carlsbad is now admitting he hired a hitman to kill his wife. Today, Tim Lambesis, lead singer of the musical group As I Lay Dying, changed his plea to guilty.
In a Vista courtroom, he changed his not guilty plea to guilty for soliciting the murder of the mother of his 3 children and wife of 8 years.
How do you plead? Guilty.
Prosecutors say he and his estranged wife Megan were going through a contentious divorce, battling over money and custody issues with their 3 adopted children. Lambesis feared she would get more than half of his earnings, and he wanted her dead.
During his imprisonment, he made a statement claiming that he and the rest of As I Lay Dying were all atheists and had only pretended to be Christian in order to sell records, a statement which his bandmates called slanderous. Lambesis later made another statement in which he claimed that he'd actually denounced his Christianity to make it easier for him to have an affair. He was released from prison on parole in 2016 and later even reunited with As I Lay Dying. Perhaps Lambesis will be able to revive his career, though in all honesty, he really doesn't deserve any success after what he's done. I honestly don't see how anyone could support a man who tried to have his wife murdered, but there are unfortunately some very forgiving fans out there. That said, the people you'll be seeing on this list going forward only get worse from here. Luke Helder's musical career was quite brief. Born in 1981 to an army commander father and health worker mother, Helder was an art and industrial design student at the University of Wisconsin-Stout. By all accounts, Helder was a good student who was polite and attentive in class. In the year 2000, he and two college friends formed a grunge band named Apathy, in which he performed guitar and lead vocals. The band saw some local success and funded their own CD entitled Sacks of People, though despite their following, record stores attempting to sell copies of the CD ended up having to give them away as nobody was buying them. In a way, it was quite appropriate that Luke fronted a grunge band, as back when the genre first emerged in the late 80s, it was seen by some as being anti-establishment and anti-authoritarian, and Luke held a strong dislike for the United States government. In May 2002, Helder told his roommate that he was going to a party. Though he was skipping work to do this, his roommate thought nothing of it. However, his roommate later received a text from Helder saying he wouldn't be back for another 2 days, but also asked him to check the news. It was revealed that Luke had gone on a cross-country journey planting pipe bombs in mailboxes. In total, 18 had been found. 6 of these bombs were detonated when the mailboxes were opened, and although no one was killed, the people who opened these mailboxes suffered gruesome injuries to their hands from the ball bearings and nails that the bombs were loaded with. Luke had included letters with the bombs, calling them attention getters, and in all of them, he denounced the government, expressing his displeasure with them, in his mind, controlling the everyday lives of the people of the United States. As this incident happened so soon after 9/11, the bombings received a lot of media attention, and mail workers in some areas refused to deliver for a while out of fear for their safety. Luke's roommate discovered a bag under his bed containing bomb-making materials. He then informed Luke's parents, who contacted the police.
The FBI said today it has identified a suspect in the mailbox bombings throughout the Midwest. He is a 21-year-old Wisconsin college student named Luke John Helder. Mr. Helder is suspected of having something to do with the 18 bombs which have been found in 5 states, including one which was found today in Amarillo, Texas.
The FBI is asking Helder, an industrial arts student at the University of Wisconsin-Stout, to turn himself in.
We encourage, as a public safety message here, Luke Helder to make contact with us. We do not want to see him harmed or any public harmed.
Sources tell ABC News that one of Helder's roommates told investigators there was evidence of black powder residue and pieces of pipe in their off-campus apartment. And investigators were told that Helder had not been seen on campus for a week. Investigators have recovered fingerprints from the evidence left behind at the crime scenes. They want to compare those to Helder's fingerprints. According to sources, FBI and Postal Service investigators also contacted Helder's father, who said his son had made anti-government statements in the past.
I really want you to know that Luke is not a dangerous person. I think he's just trying to make a statement about the way our government is run.
Luke was later found in Nevada and was apprehended after a police chase. Luke revealed the locations of the rest of the bombs, and he had planted them in a way that made it so that when the locations were marked on a map, it resembled a smiley face. This led to him being known as the smiley-faced bomber. He pleaded not guilty to the charges against him and eventually pleaded insanity. He was deemed incompetent to stand trial and has been detained in a mental ward since 2004. In 2013, a judge ordered for Helder to be re-evaluated for competency to stand trial. If he is found to be mentally sane, it's likely he will be sentenced to life in prison for his actions, considering that he essentially carried out a one-man terrorist attack with no regard for the safety of the innocent people who would inevitably open the mailboxes he planted the bombs in. It definitely seems like keeping him behind bars for the rest of his life might be for the best.
Mirror, mirror framed in gold, in your depths a story hold of a rock star who became a monster with an awful name.
Definitely one of the more infamous and hated people on this list. Paul Gadd, known almost exclusively by his stage name Gary Glitter, is a British rock singer who was most active during the glam rock era of the 1970s. He'd actually begun his career in 1960, releasing his first single at the age of 15 under the name Paul Raven. His career didn't take off, however, until 1971 when he released 2 singles, Rock and Roll Part 1 and Rock and Roll Part 2, both of which became huge hits in the UK, and the latter being one of the few glam rock songs to reach the Billboard Top 10 in the US. Around this time, he began wearing his trademark glitter suits and platform shoes, which would become one of the most iconic looks of the glam rock era. He would go on to have 11 top 10 hits in the UK, including the #1 hit, I'm the Leader of the Gang, I Am. After this, however, his career began to stall, and he announced his retirement from the music industry in 1976. The next year, he declared bankruptcy. It wasn't until the 1980s when he began to finally claw his way back into the charts. With his 1981 Christmas hit, Another Rock and Roll Christmas, guest appearances with other artists helped him to maintain his relevance for the rest of the decade and into the 90s. He also faced legal trouble around this time, however, as he had been arrested 3 times for drunk driving, with the last arrest resulting in a 10-year driving ban. His success continued into the 90s, with him releasing the best-selling autobiography, The Leader, and also performing at the opening ceremony of the 1994 FIFA World Cup in Chicago, which was viewed by hundreds of millions of people in 46 countries. He was also set to make a cameo in the Spice Girls movie Spice World.
They will take you away one day, won't they? They'll come and go, this is it, Gary.
Do you reckon?
We're off. Straight
jacket and all.
In 1997, his career would crash and burn after a disturbing revelation about Glitter's private life became public. In November 1997, Glitter had taken his laptop to PC World for repairs. What the technician found on Glitter's hard drive shocked him. The police were informed that the technician had discovered thousands of pornographic images on the hard drive, all of them involving children. The police then searched his homes in London and Somerset and discovered more images. The story quickly spread through the media, and Glitter's cameo in Spice World was removed in response. In total, Glitter was found to be in possession of over 4,000 images. On November 12, 1999, he was sentenced to 4 months in prison and registered as a sex offender. Upon his release, he expressed regret for what he did and said he wanted to move on from the incident.
I deeply regret doing what I was sent to prison for. I've served my time. I want to put it all behind me. I've lived my life.
Glitter was rejected by the British public following the incident and fled to Spain. He lived on his yacht, which was moored in Soto Grande for 6 months, and told the locals his name was Larry Brilliante. His real identity was eventually discovered, leading to him fleeing to Cambodia. However, he was arrested there in late 2002 due to his previous convictions and jailed for 4 days before being released on bail. Before returning there, he had attempted to enter Thailand. However, he was denied entry as he was considered a danger. Over 19 countries stated that he was denied entry before he finally returned to the UK. Upon his return, he was immediately added to the sex offenders register for life. In 2012, the British police launched Operation U-Tree, an investigation into historical allegations of child sexual abuse following the scandalous revelations of countless indecent acts committed by British TV presenter Jimmy Savile. Glitter was among those arrested by the police. In 2014, he was charged with 8 counts of offences committed against girls aged between 12 and 14 between the years of 1977 and 1980. In 2015, he was also accused of committing obscene acts with 3 more girls between 1975 and 1980. On February 5, 2015, he was convicted of rape and 4 counts of sexual assault and was sentenced to 16 years in prison. Since his first conviction in 1999, Glitter has been seen by everyone as nothing more than a disgusting human being, and rightly so. His career is now non-existent, and at 77 years old, most people now only wonder if he will live to see his release, or if he will die in prison. Regardless, he will always be known now as, to quote Gary himself, the rock star who became a monster.
Hey, shh. Things ain't always what they seem.
This entry is where things get truly disgusting. Born Ian David Carslake Watkins in 1977, Ian was, by all accounts, a normal child growing up and had a love for rock music. It was at Hawthorne High School where he met fellow music fan Mike Lewis. The two formed a thrash metal band called Aftermath and would usually perform in Watkins' shed. While at the Full Pony Festival, Ian met another musician, guitarist Lee Gaze. With Aftermath having split up, Watkins and Gaze formed a band called Fleshbind, but this group was also short-lived. Watkins and Lewis later reunited in a hardcore punk band called Public Disturbance, with Watkins as the band's drummer. The two stayed with the band for 3 years before leaving the band in 1998 to focus on what was originally their side project, Lost Prophets, which also included Ian's Fleshbind bandmate Lee Gaze on lead guitar and Mike Choplin on drums. After spending 2 years touring the UK and gaining a following, the band released their first studio album, The Fake Sound of Progress. At first, the album received little attention, but upon the release of the two singles, Shinobi vs. Dragon Ninja and the album's title track, the band went on to receive much more mainstream attention. This led to them touring with big-name bands such as Linkin Park and Deftones as an opening act. They also toured at Ozfest and played at other major events such as Glastonbury and the Reading and Leeds Festival. In the following years, Lost Prophets would go on to even more success, with their second album, Start Something, going to number 4 on the UK charts in 2004. Their third album, Liberation Transmission, debuted at number 1 on the UK album charts in 2006 and featured what was probably the band's best known song, Rooftops. During this time, however, Watkins had fallen into a terrible drug habit, being addicted to cocaine, ecstasy, and meth. 2008 would be the year when the first signs of just what kind of man Ian Watkins really is would come to light. In December of that year, Joanne Majelic, a former soldier and sex worker, had reported Watkins to the Pontypridd Child Services for sexual abuse towards several 14-year-old girls, after Watkins had bragged about taking their virginities. In January 2009, a police investigation was launched against Watkins following these allegations. However, this case was eventually closed later that year. Majelic attempted to report him several more times between 2009 and 2011, but no action was taken by the police. However, on April 3, 2012, one day after Lost Prophets' fifth album Weapons was released, a video surfaced of Watkins performing an obscene and disgusting act on an infant. Another video surfaced of him engaging in acts with an underage fan from Boston, Massachusetts. In December 2012, Watkins was arrested and charged with 13 sex offences against children, one of whom was only 1 year old. In November 2013, he pleaded guilty to the charges against him. It was also reported that he had sent a message to one of the women he was seeing saying, "If you belong to me, so does your baby." The day after his plea, he was reported to have made a phone call to a fan from prison, in which he described his horrific acts as mega lols, showing no remorse for what he had done. On December 18, 2013, Watkins was sentenced to 29 years in prison, with eligibility to apply for parole after serving 2/3 of his prison term, followed by 6 years of supervised release. After giving the sentence, the judge concluded that the case plunged into new levels of depravity. A senior investigating officer on the case described Watkins as a committed, organized paedophile and potentially the most dangerous sex offender he had ever seen. The other members of Lost Prophets formed a new band called No Devotion and recruited singer Jeff Rickey to effectively take Watkins' place, as they had made it clear that they wanted to sever all ties to their disgraced former lead singer. While his old bandmates continue on, Watkins is currently sat in a prison cell, where he'll most likely remain until 2042, as it seems very unlikely that the UK authorities have any intention of allowing someone as dangerous and as sick as him back into society. I couldn't make a video about evil musicians without including Varg Vikernes. Born Christian Vikernes in 1973 in Bergen, Norway, he and his family moved to Iraq when he was 6 years old, as his father was an electronics engineer developing a computer program for Saddam Hussein. There were no places left at the English school in Baghdad, so Varg had to go to an Iraqi elementary school. Varg later recounted that he faced racial discrimination from the other students at this school. On one occasion, Varg got into an argument with his teacher and called him a monkey. He stated that the teacher wouldn't dare hit him, however, as he was white. The fact that his fellow students would frequently be beaten, but he would not, is most likely what started his well-documented white supremacist views, believing that exemption from corporal punishment made him above his fellow students and teachers. These views were not exclusive to him, however. Varg claims his father owned a swastika flag and hated living in the same town as the Iraqi people. In regards to his mother, Varg has stated that she was scared that he would one day, quote, come home with a black girl. There are also claims that Varg was part of a neo-Nazi skinhead group as a teenager, but he denies this, saying that there were no skinheads in Bergen. Varg began listening to heavy metal music when he was 12 and cited Iron Maiden as his biggest influence. His love of heavy metal led to him learning to play guitar at the age of 14. In 1992, at the age of 19, he started his own one-man black metal band named Burzum. It was during this time that he met Euronymous, lead guitarist of the band Mayhem. Despite being a highly influential figure in the Norwegian black metal scene, he was nevertheless controversial due to his actions following the death of Mayhem's previous lead vocalist, Per Olin, better known as Dead. While Varg and Euronymous would collaborate musically, they would also take part in an event that would bring black metal music to the public eye for all the wrong reasons. On June 6, 1992, the Fantofstav Church, which had stood for over 800 years from the year 1150, was burned to the ground in what would be the first of many arson attacks committed by members of the black metal scene. Varg and Euronymous took part in the burning of at least one church together. In total, 50 churches were burned between 1992 and 1996. In early 1993, animosity had begun to grow between Varg and Euronymous. While it's unknown what caused the rift, it resulted in Varg stabbing Euronymous to death in his apartment on August 10, 1993. Varg claimed that he acted in self-defense, saying that Euronymous planned to stun him with a taser, tie him up, and torture him to death on camera. Varg's claim of self-defense is obviously questionable, as Euronymous had been stabbed 23 times, with 16 wounds being in his back. Varg was arrested on August 19, 1993. The police found 150 kilograms of explosives and 3,000 rounds of ammunition in his home. He had apparently been planning on blowing up the Blitz House, a far-left social centre in Oslo. On May 16, 1994, after a 2-week trial, Varg was sentenced to 21 years in prison for murder, the arson of 3 churches, the attempted arson of a 4th church, and for the theft and storage of 150 kilograms of explosives. In what's probably one of the most infamous moments in music history, upon receiving his sentence, Varg looked directly at the news camera in the courtroom and gave a chilling smile. Varg was released from prison in 2009 on probation and changed his name to Louis Cochet after moving to France. He has continued to face legal trouble since his release. In 2013, both he and his wife were arrested under suspicion of planning a terrorist attack after his wife purchased 4 rifles. The two were later released without charge, as the police were unable to find any evidence of a terrorist plot. However, Varg was charged with hate speech against Jewish and Islamic people due to posts he made on his blog, Thulian Perspective. He was given 6 months probation and an €8,000 fine. He has also been banned from YouTube due to the site's policies on hate speech. Despite his criminal history, Varg has built up a dedicated following due to the intrigue surrounding his past. However, as a convicted murderer, would-be terrorist and neo-Nazi, there's no denying that he belongs on a list like this. Harvey Philip Spector was an American producer and musician. He was born in the Bronx, New York on December 26, 1939, to Jewish Ukrainian immigrants Benjamin and Bertha Spector. Phil experienced tragedy early in his life at only 9 years old, when his father committed suicide in April of 1949. Following this, Spector's family moved to Los Angeles when he was 14. He attended Fairfax High School, where he would meet several other aspiring musicians, including future Beach Boy Bruce Johnston and Louis Adler, who would later go on to become a successful producer. During his time at Fairfax, Spector formed a band called the Teddy Bears, who in 1958 would release the single To Know Him Is to Love Him, which would make it all the way to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Unfortunately, they were never able to replicate this success, and split the next year. Spector then swapped performing for producing. While he would find success producing and writing records for a number of artists, the act that he would become the most involved with was the all-female R&B group, the Ronettes, in particular their lead singer, Veronica Greenfield. The group's work with Spector led to several hit singles in the early 60s. However, this success was short-lived, and Spector went into seclusion for the next several years following this. During this time, he had begun a relationship with Veronica Greenfield while he was still married to his first wife. After divorcing her, he married Greenfield in 1968. Upon taking his name, she began professionally calling herself Ronnie Spector, a name she would keep for the rest of her career. The two had no biological children, instead adopting 3 sons, Dante Philip, and twins Louis and Gary. Ronnie would later allege that Spector had been horribly abusive to her during their marriage. He was subjected to psychological torment by not allowing her to perform, effectively sabotaging her career. He surrounded his mansion with barbed wire and guard dogs, and also took away her shoes to prevent her from escaping. One of the more bizarre claims made by Ronnie is that on the rare occasion that Spector did allow her to leave the house alone, she would have to drive with a life-size dummy of him sitting beside her in some sort of sick way for him to be with her in spirit. During their marriage, Ronnie began drinking heavily and fell into alcoholism, but she seemed to have done this so she could attend Alcoholic Anonymous meetings and get out of the house and away from her deranged husband. Spector had apparently even gone as far as to have a gold and glass coffin placed in the mansion's basement, and told her that if she ever tried to leave him, he would kill her and put her body on display. In 1972, Ronnie was able to escape from Spector's mansion with help from her mother, leaving all of her possessions behind. The two divorced in 1974. In the settlement, Ronnie was threatened into forfeiting all of her future recording earnings, with Spector claiming he would hire a hitman to kill her if she refused. She was also forced to surrender custody of her sons to him. Years later, their sons, Gary and Dante, would reveal that Spector was abusive towards them, with him keeping them captive in a similar way he had done to Ronnie. They also claimed that he would force them to engage in sexual acts with one of his girlfriends. In case you haven't figured it out by now, I'm just going to come out and say it. Phil Spector was a lunatic. Besides his horrific treatment of Ronnie Spector, he was also infamous for waving guns around in the studio. In 1970, while working on John Lennon's rock and roll album, Spector, reportedly high out of his mind on amyl nitrate, fired a handgun right next to Lennon's ear, seemingly as a sick prank. In 1978, while working on Leonard Cohen's Death of a Ladies' Man album, a drunk Spector pointed a gun at Cohen's neck. Cohen, however, simply pushed the gun away. He also pointed a gun at Blondie frontwoman Debbie Harry and pretended to pull the trigger when he invited her to his mansion to discuss a studio collaboration. Most people probably assumed Spector didn't have the guts to actually go through with shooting anyone. Sadly, in 2003, he proved that this wasn't the case. On February 3rd, Spector met actress Lana Clarkson, who was working a side job as a waitress at the House of Blues in Los Angeles. He invited her back to his mansion, which she accepted. After arriving in Spector's limousine, the two went inside while the driver waited outside. An hour later, the driver heard a gunshot, followed by Spector running out of the back door saying, "I think I've just killed someone." Clarkson's body was found slumped in a chair with a gunshot wound in her mouth. Spector claimed that Clarkson's death was due to an accidental suicide after she had, quote, kissed the gun. However, several other women came forward during his trial, claiming that he had threatened them with a gun after they had rejected his advances. On May 29, 2009, Phil Spector was sentenced to 19 years to life in prison for the murder of Lana Clarkson. He appealed this sentence several times, but was denied each time. He died in prison on January 16, 2021, after being diagnosed with having contracted COVID-19. Essentially, there are two Phil Spectors that are remembered today, one being the groundbreaking record producer who gave the world many classic records, and the other being a cold-blooded killer who murdered an innocent woman for rejecting his advances.
When I stand on the mountain and I say, do it, it gets done. If it don't get done, then I'll move on it. And that's the last thing in the world you want me to do.
My videos aren't usually rankings, hence why I don't number the entries, but in this case, it's hard to deny that Charles Manson really is the most evil, deranged, and despicable person in this video, and probably the most evil musician who has ever lived. His story has become ingrained in American history, and he is one of the country's most infamous criminals. I don't want to go into too much detail about his life story in this video, so I'll be discussing him here without giving too much away. Charles Manson was born on November 12, 1934. It's fair to say that he was more or less a born criminal. He burned down his school when he was only 9 and was regularly committing petty theft by 13. He spent the majority of his adolescent years in reform schools. Despite his lack of education, he was believed to have an IQ of 109 at the age of 16. He was also diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. In other words, he was diagnosed as a sociopath. His time in reform school was a never-ending cycle of him escaping before being caught, only to escape again. He was eventually moved to a maximum security juvenile detention facility where he stayed until he was 20 years old, as he was released a year early for good behavior. During his time out of prison, he married a waitress in January 1955. That October, he was arrested in Los Angeles for driving a stolen car over state lines. He failed to appear in court for this charge and a similar charge against him in Florida, and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. While serving yet another sentence, this time in the United States Penitentiary in Washington, he learned to play the guitar with help from Alvin Karpis, leader of the Barker Karpis gang. He also met record producer Phil Kaufman, who believed that Manson's songwriting ability had the potential to land him a record deal. After his release from prison in 1967, Manson moved to San Francisco, where he met a number of women who he convinced to move into his apartment. Manson had become known to the hippies of the local area as a guru. He told these followers that they were the reincarnations of the original Christians, and that the establishment were the Romans who wished to control them. Naturally, by this logic, he saw himself as a messiah-like figure, often telling a story where he pictured himself nailed to a cross. With a large group now made up of both men and women, they went on the road across the west coast of America and called themselves the Manson family. In 1968, 2 of Manson's female followers were hitchhiking and were picked up by a man who happened to be a famous musician, Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys. He took the girls back to his home, and while there, he talked to them about the Beach Boys and how they had been involved with a famous Indian guru named Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, to which the girls replied that they also had a guru, a man named Charlie. When Wilson returned from a recording session the next morning, he found that the entire Manson family was there. Charles Manson greeted him and said that the women there would do anything Wilson asked. The two built up a friendship of sorts, and Manson told Wilson about his desire to become a recording artist. Dennis took Manson to his brother Brian Wilson's home studio, where Manson recorded over 100 hours of material, though these tapes had never been released. He also wrote a song for the Beach Boys entitled "Cease to Exist." However, Dennis reworked the song and changed the title. Manson responded to these changes by threatening to kill Wilson, who didn't let Manson intimidate him and instead ended their friendship. He left his home with the Manson family still living there and let the lease on the house run out, resulting in the family being evicted. It was at this point that Manson began his descent into madness that would leave several people dead by the end of 1969. After listening to the Beatles' self-titled album, or the White Album as it's more commonly known, he believed that it predicted a race war between white and black people. Manson called this apocalypse the Helter Skelter, to bring about this war that would result in the black people annihilating the white people, only for the family to emerge and rule over the former. Manson ordered the family to carry out attacks on white people and frame it in a way that implied the attacks were carried out by black people. The first victim was Gary Hinman, a music teacher who had befriended the family. He was held hostage for 2 days before being stabbed to death. The family used his blood to write "Political Piggy" on the wall and drew a panther's paw, the symbol of the Black Panthers. The second and most infamous of the murders took place on August 8, 1969. The family broke into 10050 Cielo Drive and began an attack that would leave 6 people dead. Stephen Parent was shot 4 times. Jay Sebring was shot, kicked in the face, and stabbed 7 times before dying of blood loss. Wojciech Frykowski was stabbed 51 times and shot repeatedly to death after trying to escape from the family. Abigail Folger was stabbed 28 times to death. Finally, the family turned their attention to Sharon Tate, actress and wife of director Roman Polanski, who was also 8 months pregnant. She pleaded for her baby's life, offering herself as a hostage in hopes that they would let her live long enough to give birth. However, the family ignored her pleas and stabbed her to death. Manson ordered the family to, quote, "leave something witchy," so they wrote "pig" on the front door in Tate's blood. On August 10th, the family murdered Leno and Rosemary LaBianca. Manson himself was actually present for this incident. The couple were both stabbed to death with "Rise" and "Death to Pigs" written on the walls and "Helter Skelter" on the refrigerator door, all written in Rosemary LaBianca's blood. Manson and several other members of the family were arrested in October 1969 for auto theft. One of the female members of the family bragged to a cellmate about murdering Sharon Tate, and a biker who was an acquaintance of the family told the police that Manson had been bragging about killing 5 people. Manson and his associates who took part in the murders were sentenced to death. However, in 1972, the death penalties were reduced to life in prison. Manson himself remained in prison until his death from cardiac arrest on October 19, 2017. Phil Kaufman produced the album Lie, The Love and Terror Cult in 1970. The album was not a commercial success, but has become something of a cult classic. Today, Manson is only seen as a lunatic who managed to convince his followers to murder innocent people, all because he believed it would lead to his deranged prophecy coming true. This is why, in my mind, he is the most evil musician who has ever lived.
I see blood in here every day. Every day someone's getting shot, someone's getting cut, someone's getting beat. I've lived in that all my life, woman. That don't wrinkle up my forehead. You can pile out 100 dead bodies up in front of my cell and it don't set me to do nothing.
He was not Jesus Christ or Satan. He was a very odd, bizarre, high-energy little antisocial who had some poor, confused, middle-class dropouts who decided to follow him. And he got into a situation where he had enormous power over these people, and he pulled it all together into this incoherent, hateful kind of plan. And there was no one there to say, "Charlie, girls, this is crazy."
And that's the end of the video, folks. I'm sorry there was only 7 entries. The next time I make a list video, I'll try to include more than just 7. I also plan on uploading some slightly shorter videos so that you'll get more content out of me than just 1 or 2 videos a month. By the way, if you have any people who you would have included on this list, go ahead and let me know in the comments. Be sure to like the video, leave a comment and subscribe if you're new. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye. Last year, I uploaded 7 of the most evil musicians. As the title suggests, I discussed some deplorable, disgusting and horrifying acts committed by famous and not so famous musicians that range from someone paying to have their wife killed to a cult leader who ordered his followers to murder innocent people. Naturally, there was no way I could stop at just 1 video, as there are obviously far more artists out there that belong on a list like this. Unlike the last video, you'll see that there's a common theme throughout for exactly why they are on this list. Anyway, you've all waited long enough for a new video from me, so I'm just going to get right into it. Here are 6 more of the most evil musicians. Also no, G.G. Allen isn't on this list. Deal with it.
Can you take it all away? Can you take it all away?
This video is going to start with several musicians you have most likely never heard of, but I assure you, they are musicians, and they are most definitely evil. Cassius Povey is a 29-year-old guitarist and singer from Lincolnshire, England, who played in local bands in the area. While he never achieved any commercial success due to never being signed to a record label, and as such released all his music through streaming services, he was fairly popular in the local area, and as the lead guitarist of all the bands he played in, Cassius naturally found himself attracting a significant female fan base. He obviously enjoyed the attention he received from these young girls, and would often talk to them online through Facebook, with the girls obviously being thrilled at having received attention from their favourite guitarist. Cassius, of course, enjoyed this attention as well, as he was only in his late teens to early 20s at the time. As you can probably guess though, he realised he could use these young girls' admiration for him to his advantage. He would begin talking to these girls more and more, eventually becoming friends with them and gaining their trust. This obviously led to him grooming them, completely taking advantage of the young and impressionable girls, the youngest of whom was apparently only 13 years old. He would ask to meet them in person, to which the girls gladly accepted, no doubt thrilled that they were going to meet their favourite guitarist, who by that point had become their friend. Unfortunately, his intentions were far from pure. He would meet these teenage girls and commit terrible acts on them, the kind that would scar them for the rest of their lives. And he did this with many girls for 6 years. One of his victims even became pregnant and had an abortion without telling her parents. She was only 14 years old. It wasn't until 2020 when Meg Foley, one of his victims, finally spoke out against him in a Facebook post.
Meg was still at school when Povey persuaded her to perform sexual acts online after grooming her for months on end.
He was very charismatic. He literally just added me on Facebook one day. He just added me on Facebook and he started a conversation, and he made out that he thought I was like 19 or 20. I blatantly wasn't. I was 12. I was being bullied in school, and he would make you feel you were special. He made me feel like I had friends. He introduced me to all these different people that were way older than me. Like, I felt cool, you know? He knew what he was doing. He knew exactly how to manipulate people. He knew how to make people like him. The thing that bothers me the most about this is not so much what he did, but how accepting his friends were, you know, of his actions. None of them said a word. People knew who he was and people knew what he did. Nobody said anything. This wasn't something that was a secret.
Why did you decide to out him?
Because he deserved it. Somebody needed to say something, because God forbid, you know, if he'd have carried on doing this for 10 more years, there would have been so many more people.
Cassius was arrested following the post, and in court, it was revealed that, upon meeting his victims, he would give them alcoholic drinks that he had spiked before assaulting them, with almost all of his victims having been under the age of 16. In total, Cassius was charged with 19 assaults. The court heard how he mainly targeted vulnerable females with mental health problems and difficult relationships at home.
He made himself like an idol at Clock Tower. It's him, it's Cassius Povey. Like, oh my God, Cassius is here, everyone stop what you're doing. Found out everything about me first, and then when I was at my most vulnerable and I needed him, he then used that against me.
Kate felt vulnerable because she'd split up with her boyfriend. Povey spiked her drink, she says, then yelled her at his flat.
Now it's kind of messed me up for life, because now I'm sitting here with severe depression, PTSD. I haven't been able to get a job or have a stable relationship. Like, I'm a walking, talking nightmare.
Cassius showed no remorse for what he had done, with the judge stating, quote, "All of the victims in this case have found you to be manipulative and cunning, and I have found that this is the type of person that you are." He was found guilty of 7 assaults, 1 against a woman aged over 16, and 6 against girls between 13 and 15, and he was sentenced to 17 years in prison and registered as a sex offender for life. With his imprisonment, any chance he had of ever having a career in the music business has been completely destroyed, but that's certainly for the best. If he had ever become a famous musician, there's no telling how far his reach would have extended, and how many women he would have harmed. Andy Inoki is a former grime and hip-hop artist from London, England. Growing up in Tottenham, he fell in with the gang life from a young age and had been in trouble with the law numerous times in his teenage years, having been arrested for beating an ex-girlfriend and also threatening someone with an air gun, though he was also on the receiving end of violent crime himself, being the victim of a stabbing. It was in his teen years that he discovered his passion for music and began producing his own grime and hip-hop music, which would see airplay on various pirate radio stations in London. This led to him catching the eye of the grime group Boy Better Know, and he was brought into the group as a new member in the mid-2000s. Joining Boy Better Know exposed him to a wider audience and led to him performing to crowds of thousands rather than the small clubs where he would perform for probably less than 100 people prior to this. He would continue performing with Boy Better Know until he released his first solo single in 2014 entitled Feed 'Em to the Lions, which would become a big hit for him and to this day is generally considered to be his signature song. The success of Feed 'Em to the Lions led to him being signed to the legendary Island Records, a label which has counted many notable artists among its lineup, such as Ariana Grande, The Weeknd, Shawn Mendes, KSI, and of course, the Insane Clown Posse. Hey, Violent J was nice enough to give my Evil Wrestlers video a shout out, so these guys are awesome in my book. Being signed to such a major label allowed Inoki, now going by the stage name Solo 45, to move out to the rough neighbourhoods of Tottenham and settle in a fancy riverside apartment in Bristol. All in all, things were definitely on the up for him. His career was about to take off, and he'd finally managed to leave his old life behind and move to a much better area, so it looked like he was heading to stardom. Unfortunately for him, this would not be the case, as he would eventually find himself in trouble with the law for a truly vile offence. In April 2017, a woman reported him to the police for a vicious assault in which he had brutally tortured her, with him even going as far as attempting to suffocate her through waterboarding. Solo 45 was immediately arrested, with the police searching his apartment for any more evidence of foul play. When they searched his phone, they discovered that he had thousands of videos of women being tortured. Solo's court date would not take place until 2020, but it was during his trial that he proudly proclaimed just how cruel and depraved he is. He would talk about how he enjoyed abusing women, but claimed that it was all consensual, and that he wasn't actually raping them. His victims, however, said that he would use their admiration for him to groom them and gain their trust, before turning on them and beginning his horrific abuse. They also said that they were imprisoned by him, and threatened with a handgun if they tried to escape or resist him. He also stabbed one of the women in the thigh. According to one of the women, he only found enjoyment when they resisted him. When they stopped fighting back, he would grow bored and find new targets. Solo freely admitted that he was a sadistic necrophile, in that he got pleasure from seeing other people cry. However, Solo still insisted that these acts were all consensual. The prosecution managed to get him to slip up though, as when they asked if he stopped when the women asked him to, he replied with, "Usually," before obviously realizing what he had just said and changed his answer to, "Always." Unfortunately for him, and fortunately for everyone else, the court knew that they had caught him in a lie, and were able to prove that his actions were in fact not consensual. He was convicted of over 30 counts of assault and sentenced to 24 years in prison, but in 2021, his sentence was actually increased to 30 years after his initial sentence was deemed to be too lenient. After more details came out about just how extreme his abuse of these women had been, many people called for him to be given a life sentence, but this was rejected, and he will be eligible for parole after serving 20 years. He may not have gotten the punishment he truly deserved, but he will at the very least spend all of his best years behind bars, and by the time he's released, few will remember the name Solo 45, though his victims will never forget the pain and suffering they endured at his hands.
All I wanna do is chop, 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 chop up a body. Chop, 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 chop it up bodies. It's one of my favorite hobbies.
Shane Coates is a horrorcore rapper, best known for being one half of the group Deviant Horror, alongside his wife, Ty Coates. As you may have guessed by their face paint, Shane and Ty are juggalos, having based their look on the Insane Clown Posse, and obviously following their footsteps by becoming a horrorcore duo. In 2016, the two opened their own independent record label, Deviant Horror Entertainment, through which they released all of their material, including their debut album, Blood, Sweat and Tears, in 2018. The album obviously didn't chart as it was a quote underground release, as most Juggalo records are. The album did, however, get them noticed among the Juggalo community and saw them getting some gigs afterwards, including a spot performing at the annual Gathering of the Juggalos in 2019. Their song, Chopping Up Bodies, was also featured in the indie horror film Clown Motel, and the two of them were actually set to appear in the sequel. While it was obvious commercial success was always going to elude them, at the very least it seemed that they would be able to maintain a following among the Juggalo crowd, and probably get some more high-profile gigs and even another spot at the gathering of the Juggalos. That was until 2022, when Shane would find himself in some serious trouble with the law. On May 17th, Shane was arrested for the sexual battery of a 13-year-old girl. This alone is horrific enough, but it becomes even more appalling when you learn that the victim was apparently his own daughter. Earlier that month, a Facebook page had been created called The Victims of Shane Coates, in which many anonymous women came forward detailing their experiences with Shane. One told of how when she was 13, she was befriended by a then 20-year-old Shane, who quickly began to show his true colours when he told her that she was on his, quote, fuck list, and asked her for explicit photos. Thankfully, she never sent him any photos or went to meet him in person, as she had a very strict mother who banned her from using Facebook after she found out that her daughter had been talking to a much older man. Another woman said that she had met him at a wrestling show when she was 14 and he was 21, where he immediately began acting inappropriate towards her and even made out with her after the concert. He tried to get her to come into his car, but it would seem she turned him down, but did give him her phone number. Shane would proceed to send her explicit texts for the next 2 years, before he finally coerced her into sleeping with him, after which he told her that what they did must remain a secret. Presumably following this, the two fell out of contact with each other. Another story involves a girl who met Shane through a mutual friend when she was 16 and went to a party with him, only for Shane and a friend of his to repeatedly give her alcohol to get her drunk. Shane then took her to his car, and you can probably guess what he did next. He would then keep the girl at his house for several days before her mother called the police, and they arrived to take her home. After this, the girl never spoke to Shane again. These are just several of the stories posted to the Victims of Shane Coates Facebook page. The page was actually what led to the police investigating Shane and ultimately arresting him. Shane's own mother has said that she believes all of the stories circulating about him. Shane is currently facing up to life in prison for the assault on the 13-year-old girl. People have also called for the arrest of his wife, Ty, as she is believed to have been his accomplice, but she seems to have gone into hiding. Shane Coates has shown what an absolute monster he is, and is now hated by the Juggalo community, and rightly so. If he does end up going to jail for life, it's most certainly deserved. One thing worth mentioning about Shane is some details I found out about him when he was younger. He used to be a scene kid in the late 2000s and early 2010s. Well, I say kid, he was actually in his early 20s by then. He would post these ridiculous videos of him basically acting like he had problems.
Oh my God! Ah! That picture's gay! That picture right there is gay! And you're stupid! That picture fucking sucks! God damn! Who the fuck would post that on their MySpace? What the hell's wrong with you? What is wrong with you? What the hell is wrong with you? Why would you post a dumbass picture like that one? God damn!
Hi there, guys! It's storming outside, and I'd just like to tell you that I like potatoes. Look at that weather. Look at that weather. Isn't that an awesome way to spend Christmas? In shitty weather? Yay! I love shitty weather because it makes me feel like a tard.
At first, I didn't think it was the same guy because of how different he looked. But when you look closely at his face, particularly his eyes, you think, yeah, that's him. He was also a crunkcore artist performing under the name Less Than 3, and his music was absolutely awful. Why am I telling you all of this? Well, it turns out Shane's days as a crunkcore artist ties into the very next person on this list, as not only was he friends with this person, but he had also apparently been roommates with them. And while you may not have heard of Shane, I guarantee you have heard of his friend. Yes, Shane Coates' friend and roommate is none other than the infamous Dahvie Vanity.
Get it. Battle! Oh, why am I getting attacked with bananas? No! No! Ah! Ah! Oh, I'm under attack! Help! Help! Oh, no! 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 Oh my God! Oh! I just got attacked by Dahvie and Jay.
Jesus David Torres is of course best known for being the frontman of the electronic dance electropop crunkcore group Blood on the Dance Floor. He originally got his starts on MySpace, where he was actually a hairstylist, though it was actually revealed years later that he didn't know a thing about styling hair, was not a licensed hairdresser, and wore a wig, which is pretty obvious when you look at his high school photo and see that he was already starting to recede by then, so it stands to reason that he wouldn't have enough hair left by the mid-2000s to be able to style it like that. All of that said though, Dahvie still managed to become quite popular on MySpace, and he used this popularity to launch his band Blood on the Dance Floor in 2006, alongside his friends Christopher Mongillo and Rebecca Fugati, both of whom left during the recording of their second album. They were replaced by Garrett Marshall McLaughlin, who met Dahvie through his sister who was dating Dahvie at the time, and he would go by the stage name Garrett Ecstasy.
Dahvie was together for about, half year working on that, and then I frequently joined. My sister actually started dating Dahvie, and I met Dahvie in Orlando at a Jeffree Star concert. And let's see. Well, after that, pretty much just happened. I started helping out with the Diamond album, and then after that, we collabed completely. And now we're having, we've had our singles, Miss Bipolar, Scream for My Ice Cream. We had that EP, and then the Ice Cream EP, and then we're working on our new album, OMFG, which is our tour that we're actually coming up with very soon.
It's our first headlining tour, so haters, thank you. You make us lots of money.
Thank you very much, haters.
Thank you so much. Hate me. I'm fucking your dad right now. I'm fucking your dad right now. Anywho.
The duo would prove to be quite successful, with them releasing one album and 3 EPs before embarking on a tour to promote a third album. Although I don't know why people would want to see them live, since from what I've been able to find, their performances basically consisted of Dahvie very poorly attempting to rap and sing, while Garrett just screamed over him. Something happened during this tour, however, that would actually be the beginning of what Dahvie is best known for now. During a show in Colorado on September 12, 2009, as in right in the middle of the band's performance, the police arrived and dragged Dahvie off the stage, arresting him. It was later revealed that Dahvie had been arrested following a report to the police from 17-year-old Taurine Nicole that he had raped her in the parking lot outside the concert venue. This had happened immediately after Dahvie had attempted the same act on 16-year-old Ariel Klein in his car.
Did you have any idea that this was coming, or?
No, I mean, and honestly, it happened over the course of about 45 seconds where we were walking along the strip and suddenly this had happened. I mean, I couldn't even process what was happening as fast as it was happening.
You must have just been in shock.
I was definitely in shock. Looking back on it, directly afterwards, I did definitely have some signs that I was probably about to pass out, which, I mean, obviously things wouldn't have gotten better from there, so I'm glad I didn't.
When you say you're about to pass out, was that just because you're in shock from what had happened, what he had done to you?
Yeah, I mean, directly afterwards, I mean, my brain was trying its hardest to process that, but that's not something that it processes well.
What did Dahvie Vanity say to you after the act?
What he said to me is something I will never forget. I think it scarred me beyond what I could convey here. He said, "That was so good, baby girl. You made me feel so good."
That was so good, baby girl.
Yeah, and I think the part that bothered me the most was that he said, "You made me feel so good."
And you didn't do anything except be there when he forced himself upon you. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There was no participation on my part.
Dahvie was briefly jailed following this, but was bailed out by his father. He was unable to complete the rest of the tour, however, leaving Garrett Ecstasy to finish it on his own. This was not the first time Dahvie had been accused of assault. In June 2007, 14-year-old Diana Farrell called into a Christian radio show to ask the host, Dawson McAllister, for advice. When McAllister asked what was wrong, she told him about the man who had assaulted her at her home 8 days earlier. After Farrell revealed what had happened, one of the staff members of the radio station called the police. Farrell would explain to the police that she had met Dahvie through MySpace and that he had come to her house to style her hair for her. After finishing working on her hair, Dahvie immediately forced himself on her. Farrell's parents didn't press charges under the condition that he cut off contact with their daughter. This incident, along with the two in September 12, 2009, would be far from the last that Dahvie would be accused of. Following the 2009 tour, Garrett Ecstasy was either fired from the band or left due to not wanting to work with someone like Dahvie. Either way, he was replaced that same year by 18-year-old Jeremy Bryan Griffiths, who would go by the stage name Javon Monroe, thus creating the band's most recognizable lineup. I've noticed that Dahvie always seemed to have a tall, good-looking sideman who contrasted himself, a rather short, overweight, and not particularly good-looking weirdo. Perhaps he did this to make the group more appealing to their female fanbase. From 2010 onwards, the group would see its biggest success, and with this success came a slew of ranting channels on YouTube who would make videos criticizing the band's quite frankly awful music, much to the anger of Blood on the Dance Floor's notoriously toxic fanbase, who would often respond to these videos by leaving hateful comments that usually included death threats. Of course, these comments were usually compiled into videos of people laughing at how ridiculous and over the top these teenagers were being. On July 10th, 2010, we would see just how harsh and cruel the Blood on the Dance Floor fanbase could be when it came to defending Dahvie Vanity, when a post was made on the website Sticky Drama, in which the then 11-year-old Jessica Leonhardt was named as an underage girl that Dahvie had recently engaged in sexual acts with. Rather than condemn Dahvie, however, the forum instead focused all of its outrage on Jessica. Jessica responded to the post, saying that she and Dahvie were only friends. Dahvie was 26 at this time, by the way, just so we're clear on the age gap between the two. After making a video addressing the hate she was getting from the Blood on the Dance Floor fans, she later received harassment from 4chan, which got so bad that she uploaded the infamous video of her and her father addressing the trolls.
I'm gonna tell you right now, this is from her father. You bunch of lying, no good punks. And I know who it's coming from because I've back-traced it. And I know who's emailing and who's doing it. And you've been reported to the cyber police and the state police. So you better write one more thing or screw with my computer again. You'll be arrested. End of conversation from her father.
You're right, fucking gonna come and beat her ass.
And if you come near my daughter, guess what? Consequences will never be the same. You lying bunch of pricks.
Dahvie, the man who had groomed and abused Jessica, decided to mock her by creating a reenactment of the video, with Javon Monroe playing the role of Jessica and Dahvie himself playing her father.
This is Harry Potter, and you guys ruining my life, and I know my shirt is falling down and call me a whore for it.
Don't be saying suicide!
You guys are ruining my life.
That's what! I have nothing nice to say about my daughter! So don't say I'm recording this! No, I report you to the cyber police! And the state police! And whoever will be my daughter, you will have to deal with the police! You done goofed! You done goofed! This is her father! No good life, punks! And I know what's going from I backtraced it! And I know what's going on, and I will contact the cyber police and the state police! If you try to beat my daughter, the consequences will never be the same again!
The next year, Jessica would be filmed giving an apology to Blood on the Dance Floor and their fans.
Hi Dahvie, hi Jay, hi Sally, hi the whole VTDF spectrum. It's Jessica Rose, aka Jessica Slaughter here, and I'm saying sorry for everything that I've done. I feel really bad about it now. I'm in foster care. I have been locked up in mental institutions, and just like you done Goof said, I do have to go to counseling now and everything, but it's not because of you. So, I'm really sorry for everything that I've done. I'm sorry for accusing you of rape and everything. I know that all that happened. And I'm having this recorded by Oriana because I have no computer privileges now because of the foster. And why am I talking with my hands? I'm truly sorry for everything that I've done, and I love VOTDF. They're basically all the CDs that I have are VOTDF now, so just saying that I'm sorry and everything, and I love you guys to death. I mean, Jay's my idol, Dahvie's my idol, and Sally inspired this. I shaved it off my head. So, yeah, love you guys. Sorry.
She wouldn't be seen again until 2018, when she would finally confirm that the allegations of what Dahvie did to her were in fact true. Despite Dahvie's best efforts to convince people that the allegations against him were all lies, he quickly became far more well known as a predator than a musician. Even Jeffree Star, who these days is well known as a YouTuber, but at that time was actually a fairly popular scene artist, publicly accused Dahvie of being a predator on Twitter. Unfortunately, Blood on the Dance Floor's fanbase remained as vocal as ever, and continued to support the group. The band's detractors, however, began analysing the group's lyrics, and how it was obviously very suspicious that a man like Dahvie, who had all of these allegations against him, would have so many songs revolving around sexual themes. Dahvie wrote all of these songs knowing full well that his fanbase was made up mostly of underage girls. Around the same time, videos began to surface of Dahvie just generally being creepy and inappropriate towards his fans, while they were obviously too young and starstruck to realise what he was doing.
I'm working out sex. Oh, video.
Yeah. Video.
Oh,
okay. Oh my god.
Are we gonna make a porno or something?
Yes. Yes.
Oh my god. Yes. Give me your applause right now. Give me all your applause. I want them all. Give me your applause right now. I want your applause. You see this thing? Give them to me right the fuck now. Don't be a prude. Don't be a prude. Give me that Hello Kitty. Give me that Hello Kitty. I want it. Here we go.
All of this took place while Dahvie was promoting the band as being about love and positivity, when anyone with a functioning brain could tell that he was completely full of shit. Despite all of the negative press Dahvie was getting, the band continued to grow in popularity and even headlined the 2011 and 2012 Warped Tour. Many people actually attribute Dahvie's presence on Warped Tour to be what sparked the repeated bad press the event gets for basically being a playground for predators. During this time, Dahvie worked with two more women who would later accuse him of assault. Lady No Grady, who appeared on the group's biggest hit, Bewitched, alleged that Dahvie made several unwanted advances towards her, but because she, in her own words, stood up to him immediately, he was apparently too intimidated to go any further in his advances and instead backed down, showing that he only targets women and girls who he believes won't put up a fight. The second woman was New Year's Day vocalist Ash Costello, who alleged that Dahvie had attempted to strangle her on a Halloween night and tried to play it off as a joke. One of New Year's Day's merch workers, Daniel Rodriguez, also alleged that Costello had told Dahvie repeatedly not to touch her, but he ignored her and would continue doing so, even doing it on stage during performances. Rodriguez also claimed that he would often see underage girls getting on and off Blood on the Dance Floor's tour bus. With all of the bad press surrounding Dahvie, it would seem that it became too much for Javon Monroe to handle, and he left the band in 2016, and would later accuse Dahvie of being abusive towards him as well, saying that Dahvie was incredibly controlling, preventing him from contacting his family, and also withholding his HIV medication. Following his departure, the band would split up, and Dahvie would recruit his then-fiancée Fallon Vendetta to be his new sidekick in the band, but this would last only a year, as Fallon left the band and later came out and also accused him of abuse. Chris Hansen launched an investigation into Dahvie in 2020 and interviewed a number of his victims. Following this, many more women came out and accused Dahvie of assault, with the count eventually reaching 21 women, with many of them going into detail about how cruel and violent Dahvie could be. Unfortunately, Dahvie is currently the only musician on this list who is still walking free as of this video. He doesn't seem to have changed at all, as he's reportedly still talking to underage girls online. Most of his fans from back in Blood on the Dance Floor's heyday appear to have moved on due to simply outgrowing the band, and because they've realised that the man they supported for so long was a sexual predator who only viewed all of them as objects and toys to be used for his sick, depraved games. Dahvie's catchphrase back in the early 2010s was, "Haters make us famous." Of course, the hate towards the band would stop being about their music and more towards the band's predatory lead singer. Dahvie is still releasing music today under various different names and frequently posts on his Instagram. Mostly he posts photographs riddled with filters that change his appearance to the point that he looks almost like an alien or something. He also still wears his wigs all the time, despite the fact that he's been photographed without one, which shows that he's now completely bald. Dahvie has basically been a joke for the better part of a decade now, but the internet now sees him for what he really is, a cruel and manipulative monster who we can only hope that will eventually be brought to justice and sent to prison where he belongs. Anton Singleton, better known by his stage name, Big Lurch, is a former rapper who was active in the Bay Area of California between 1996 and 2002. Growing up in Dallas, Texas, Singleton displayed his skills as a writer from an early age, as he began writing poetry when he was only 7 years old. At the age of 17, after having moved to San Francisco, he decided he wanted to take his skills as a poet and transfer them over to a career as a rapper, and took the stage name Big Lurch, after the Addams family's towering butler of the same name. Being 6'7" himself, the name seemed very appropriate. In 1996, he co-founded the hip-hop group Cosmic Slop Shop alongside Marvin Dooney Baby Selman and Rick Rock, who'd previously worked as a producer on Tupac's final album, All Eyes on Me. Though the group saw minor success with the single Sinful, they released only one album, which performed poorly commercially, and the group split in 1998. On September 16, 2000, one day after his 24th birthday, Singleton was struck by a drunk driver and suffered a broken neck. He spent a long time in the hospital and was heavily medicated due to the constant pain he was in. Unfortunately, the pain continued after he returned home, and as he didn't have access to large amounts of legal pain medication, he turned to the illegal drug PCP for pain management. The drug obviously had an effect on his mind, with him developing a borderline obsession with the occult and horror films. This manifested itself in his writing, with him switching to a subgenre of hip-hop known as horrorcore, which centers around the occult, the supernatural, and psychological themes. Singleton's PCP use grew worse as time went on. He would get high and stay that way for weeks on end, sometimes neglecting to even eat. His mental state became worse, and he would become more and more delusional. This would come to a head in April of 2002. On April 10th, the Los Angeles police were called when Singleton was seen standing naked in the middle of the street, while covered in blood, staring at the sky and holding a human lung in his hand. When the police arrested him, they found that the lung he was holding had been partially eaten. The person who called the police was a friend of Singleton's, who had gone to his apartment to find a truly shocking scene. The body of Singleton's roommate, Tanisha Yasai, was laying on the ground. Her chest had been torn open, with both of her lungs removed. She had teeth marks on her face, and a 3-inch blade was embedded in her shoulder. After his arrest, the police performed a medical examination on Singleton's stomach and found human flesh that was not his own. Tanisha Yasai's boyfriend confirmed that he and Singleton had done PCP the day of the murder, which clearly caused the latter to go into a blind rage, leading to him brutally murdering Yasai and consuming her flesh. At his trial, Singleton pleaded insanity, with his defense saying that he was in a psychotic state due to his use of PCP on the night of the murder. However, the court ruled that his drug use and his claim of insanity were not satisfactory reasons for committing the murder. The district attorney concluded that drug use could not be used for an insanity plea. The judge agreed, and Singleton was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Tanisha Yasai's mother filed a wrongful death lawsuit in 2003 against Singleton, his bodyguard, Stress Free Records, Death Row Records, and Yasai's boyfriend. The suit charged that the labels had provided Singleton with drugs to, quote, encourage him to act out in an extreme violent manner so as to make him more marketable as a gangster rap artist. Part of what makes a gangster rap artist marketable is the fact that the artist is a participant in violent activities, the lawsuit claimed. Death Row protested, saying that it had no connection to Singleton and was dropped from the lawsuit. Singleton's only studio album, It's All Bad, was released in 2004, 1 year after he was sentenced. Due to the controversy surrounding him, the album only received a limited release. As such, it is now considered quite rare and has been known to go for hundreds of dollars on eBay. By far the most famous, commercially successful and, in all honesty, most talented person on this list, Robert Sylvester Kelly is one of the most successful R&B singer-songwriters in history, with a career that spanned 30 years. Born in Chicago in 1967, Robert began singing in his church choir when he was 8 years old, and it was here that his gift for singing first became apparent. It was also in his 8th year where he would experience tragedy for the first time in his life, when his then-girlfriend named Lulu fell into a river and drowned. It was also around this time that he apparently became the victim of sexual abuse at the hands of an unnamed female family member, which he claims went on until he was 14 years old. He also claims to have been abused by a male family friend and never told anyone, as he thought no one would believe him. The abuse apparently caused him to attempt to end his life when he was only 11. Things would improve for him in high school, however, as he won a talent show with the performance of Stevie Wonder's Ribbon in the Sky, and was encouraged by his music teacher to give up a possible career in basketball to pursue a career in music. His career began in 1989 when he formed the New Jack Swing group MGM and released the single Why You Wanna Play Me.
They say that you don't love me. They can tell by the way you play me to the last. You wanna drive in my Mercedes and wear my gold chains round your neck. Well, I'm simply not having it.
After signing with the independent label Tab Dash Records, the group appeared on the televised talent show Big Break, which brought Kelly to national attention and also led to him winning the $100,000 grand prize. However, despite winning the contest, the group split up not long after. Kelly would then start another group called Public Announcement, and with them would release one album, Born into the 90s. While the album itself was not a big hit, failing to break the Billboard Top 40, it did produce the successful single, She's Got That Vibe. The interesting thing about this song is that most people will have only heard the single version. The full album version contains one line that was actually the first sign of what kind of person R. Kelly was behind the scenes. We'll come back to this in a bit. In 1993, Kelly released his first solo album, 12 Play, which would become a huge success for him, reaching number 2 on the Billboard Top 100 and spawning the hit single Bump and Grind, which spent 12 weeks at number 1. This album obviously made him a megastar in the US and led to many artists wanting to work with him. This included a young aspiring singer named Aaliyah Horton. The two had met in 1992 after being introduced by Aaliyah's uncle, record producer and founder of Blackground Records, Barry Hankerson. Taking Aaliyah under his wing, the two began working on her debut album, Age Ain't Nothing But a Number, in 1993. This album was basically an R. Kelly album in all but name, as he wrote all but one of the songs on it, produced the album, frequently provides guest vocals throughout, and even appears out of focus on the album cover. During the time they worked on the album, the two grew very close, and eventually developed a relationship with each other. The problem with this, of course, is that Aaliyah was 14 at the time, and Kelly knew this, as he met her when she was 12 years old, and had known about her prior to this, as she was the same Aaliyah mentioned in She's Got That Vibe, with her name being included in the song as a favor to her uncle. The media had suspected that there was secretly a romantic nature to their relationship, but each time the two were asked about it, they would always brush it off and say that they were, quote, just best friends.
Everybody seems to think that y'all are either girlfriend or boyfriend or cousins or friends. Let's just get the record straight.
I better go get me a white Jeep.
Well, no, we're not related at all. No, we're not. We're just very close. He's my best friend.
Yeah, cool.
Now, who found who? In the whole wide world.
In the December 1994 issue of Vibe magazine, a marriage certificate was published showing that Kelly and Aaliyah had gotten married in Cook County, Illinois on September 6th of that year. The certificate states that Aaliyah was 18 years old, when she was actually 15 at the time. Kelly had apparently bribed someone to change her ID to say that she was 18, and this happened behind her parents' back. The marriage would be annulled in February 1995. For whatever reason, people directed all the blame to Aaliyah rather than the 27-year-old man who got her to marry him, believing that she had lied to him about her age. It wouldn't be until 2019, almost 20 years after Aaliyah's tragic death in a plane crash, that he would finally admit to have knowingly engaged in sexual acts with a minor. The controversy did seemingly nothing to Kelly's career. His self-titled follow-up to 12 Play made it all the way to number 1 and spawned 3 number 1 singles. 1996, of course, saw the release of what's probably his most iconic song, I Believe I Can Fly, from the Space Jam soundtrack. His third album, R, would hit number 2 on the Top 100 and spawned the number 1 hit single, I'm Your Angel, which was a duet with Celine Dion. And the year 2000 would see the release of 12 Play 2, which would be his second number 1 album. All in all, it seemed like nothing could stop the Pied Piper of R&B's momentum. Yes, that's really what he called himself. In 2002, however, Kelly would find himself wrapped up in his first big controversy. A video had begun circulating that showed him engaging in obscene acts with an underage girl. While this was once again brushed off by Kelly's fans, this time he would not escape so easily, and was arrested for producing CP that year. He would plead not guilty and was released on bail, before being arrested again in 2003, once again for producing CP. Just like last time, this did seemingly nothing to damage his career, as his next album, Chocolate Factory, sold over 500,000 copies in its first week and became his third #1 album. And of course, he would release his magnum opus, Trapped in the Closet, in 2005.
Shit, quick, put me in the closet.
When Kelly finally went to trial over the CP charges in 2008, his victim refused to testify, leaving the jury no choice but to find him not guilty. Once again, he escaped any kind of punishment. He had apparently paid the girl's family a $2 million bribe to keep quiet and not testify against him. In 2017, Kelly would once again find himself accused of assault when 3 sets of parents came forward and accused him of running a sex cult, which he had brainwashed their daughters into joining. Naturally, Kelly denied these accusations, and it seemed that he once again would escape any kind of punishment. It was at this point that a movement started called Mute R. Kelly. Originally started in Atlanta, Georgia, to have one of his concerts cancelled there, the movement soon spread across the world, with its members protesting outside his recording studios and concert venues, and also calling into radio stations imploring them not to play his music. This would be the start of his downfall, and in 2019, his world would finally come crashing down when Lifetime released its Surviving R. Kelly documentary series. While the first 3 episodes discussed details the public were already aware of, the final 2 would prove to be particularly shocking, as his victims went into detail about the abuse they suffered at his hands, with most of these victims having been among those who were forced into joining his cult. All of the stories focused on the physical and mental abuse Kelly would put them through so he could control them. He finally began facing backlash as radio stations stopped playing his music, streaming services would no longer recommend his music to anyone, and he was dropped from his record labels. Karma was finally beginning to catch up with him. After the documentary was released, Kelly gave his infamous interview with Gayle King. I'm sure you've all seen the memes from it, but this was Kelly's attempt to try and deny any of the allegations against him and get the public back on his side.
I didn't do this stuff. This is not me. I'm fighting for my life. Y'all killing me with this. I gave y'all 30 years of my career.
Robert.
30 years of my career. Y'all trying to kill me. You killing me, man. This is not about music. I'm trying to have a relationship with my kids, and I can't do it. Y'all just don't want to believe the truth. You don't want to believe it.
Unfortunately for him, his luck had finally run out. He would be arrested a month later and charged with 10 counts of sexual assault. Several months later, he would be arrested again, this time for racketeering and human trafficking over state lines. He would go to trial in 2021. 10 victims came forward to testify against him. Former employees would also give their testimony, as well as many government witnesses. Many pieces of damning evidence would also be used against him. The full details of his marriage to Aaliyah were finally brought to light, with him revealing that he married her because he believed that she was pregnant, thus confirming that he had indeed engaged in acts with an underage girl. At the end of the trial, he was found guilty of racketeering, sexual exploitation of a child, bribery, sex trafficking, and violation of the Mann Act. A year later, he was found guilty of enticing a child and producing CP, and was sentenced to 30 years in prison. With this, Robert Kelly's reign of terror finally came to an end. His victims were able to stand before a court of law and speak directly to him, condemning him for all the pain and suffering he had put them through. As of this video, he's currently facing more charges in Chicago and Minnesota. Considering he's now 55 years old, it's likely that he will never leave prison alive. While he may be one of the most successful R&B artists of all time, his legacy is forever tarnished by his horrific and depraved actions, making him one of the most infamous and hated sexual predators in music history, right up there with the likes of Gary Glitter and Ian Watkins. From now on, whenever someone hears the name R. Kelly, they will not think of the singer-songwriter Pied Piper of R&B, but the cruel and disgusting monster that he had been behind the scenes for over 30 years. He may be behind bars now, but his victims will live with the memories of his abuse for the rest of their lives. And that's the end of the video, folks. I'm really sorry this one took so damn long. This was because of a combination of me getting sick, always being really tired for some strange reason, and just generally having trouble finding some motivation to edit on some days. That being said, there's really no excuse for a video taking over 2 months to come out. I swear I'm going to try my hardest to get one more video out before the year's over, and if not, you all have my permission to kick my ass. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye. It's been 2 years since I last made an Evil Musicians video. I'm sure you all had a feeling I'd be coming back to them eventually. I couldn't just stop at the 13 I've covered already, so now I'm back with yet another Evil Musicians list. Here are 6 more of the most evil musicians. Karl Logan, born Karl Modzelewski on April 28, 1965 in Clifford, Pennsylvania, carved out a significant place for himself in the heavy metal scene as a longtime guitarist for Manowar. His journey from a young musician in small-town America to the stages of international metal festivals is a tale of talent meeting opportunity, shadowed by a fall from grace that stunned fans around the world. Growing up in a rural area, Logan was drawn to music at an early age. He picked up the guitar as a teenager, inspired by the virtuosic playing of artists like Eddie Van Halen and Randy Rhoads. His dedication to honing his craft was evident. Hours spent practicing in his bedroom led to a proficiency that caught the attention of local bands. By the late 1980s, he was playing in clubs and bars across the Northeast, building a reputation for his technical skills and electrifying solos. The pivotal moment in Logan's career came in the early 1990s, when he crossed paths with Joey DeMaio, the bassist and founding member of Manowar. If you don't know who Manowar are, they're basically the first real power metal band. Queen had a couple of power metal style songs on their first 2 albums. Rainbow had a number of power metal tracks courtesy of Ronnie James Dio, most notably Stargazer, which is one of the greatest songs ever written, by the way. And then there was Riot, whose song Warrior was probably the first US power metal song. But Manowar were the first metal band to frequently write songs about battles, warriors, and gods and the like. They also made what many consider to be the gayest album cover ever, but that's neither here nor there. At the time when Logan met DeMaio, Manowar was searching for a new guitarist to replace David Shankle, who had left the band after the release of the album The Triumph of Steel. And the two apparently met when Logan almost accidentally hit DeMaio with his motorcycle. Impressed by Logan's playing, DeMaio invited him to join the band in 1994. This opportunity catapulted Logan onto the global stage, aligning him with a group known for their grandiose themes and powerful performances. Logan's first album with Manowar was Louder Than Hell, released in 1996. This record marked a return to the band's straightforward heavy metal roots after previous forays into more complex compositions. Logan's guitar work on the album was both precise and fiery. His style meshed seamlessly with Manowar's ethos of celebrating the might and majesty of metal music. Over the next 2 decades, Logan became an integral part of Manowar's identity. He contributed to several albums, including Warriors of the World, which featured the anthem Warriors of the World United, a song that became a staple in the band's live shows. Logan's solos and riffs were central to the band's sound during this period, characterized by their blend of classical influences and heavy metal intensity. Manowar was known not just for their music, but for their larger-than-life image. Concerts often featured elaborate sets, pyrotechnics, and the band members clad in warrior-like attire. It's worth noting that Logan really stood out compared to his bandmates, who were all fairly buff with long hair, while he was skinny and wore a very obvious wig. He was part of record-breaking performances, including the band's 2008 concerts in Bulgaria, which lasted over 5 hours and was certified as the longest heavy metal concert ever by the Guinness Book of Records. Despite their dedicated fanbase, Manowar faced criticism for their bombastic style and unabashed self-mythologizing. However, Logan and his bandmates remained unapologetic, doubling down on their commitment to delivering an immersive and intense experience for their fans. The band continued to tour extensively, particularly in Europe and South America, where their popularity remained strong. Behind the scenes, Logan maintained a relatively private life. He wasn't as publicly visible as some of his bandmates, rarely giving interviews or engaging in the spotlights outside of performances. This low profile made the revelations that emerged in 2018 all the more shocking. In October 2018, news surfaced that Karl Logan had been arrested in Charlotte, North Carolina on charges related to the possession of child pornography. The arrest had actually occurred in August of 2018, but it wasn't made public until October of that year. Logan faced 6 counts of third-degree sexual exploitation of a minor, a serious offense under North Carolina law. The charges stemmed from an investigation that discovered he had downloaded and possessed explicit videos involving minors between the ages of 4 and 12. Manowar swiftly issued a statement distancing themselves from Logan. They emphasized that he would not perform with the band and that they were unaware of his alleged activities. The band, preparing for their final Battle Farewell tour, moved forward without him, enlisting guitarist E.V. Martell as his replacement. Legal proceedings progressed over the next 2 years. In July 2019, Logan was indicted by a federal grand jury on the charges. He pleaded guilty in July 2020 to 1 count of receipt of child porn and was subsequently sentenced in 2022 to 5.5 years in prison. The sentence brought some closure to the legal aspect of the case, but left lingering discomfort within the music community. Logan's conviction had a ripple effect on Manowar's legacy. While the band continued to perform and record, the association with Logan's crimes cast a shadow over their history during his tenure. Discussions about the band's past work became complicated, with some fans choosing to separate the art from the artist, while others found it impossible to enjoy the music without recalling the offences. In the wake of the scandal, Manowar maintained their focus on their music and fanbase. They continued touring, including performances that celebrated anniversaries of their classic albums. The band also worked on new material, striving to uphold their reputation as stalwarts of the heavy metal genre. As for Logan, his life after the arrest and conviction became shrouded in privacy. Prior to serving his sentence, there were few public appearances or statements from him. His absence from the public eye was a stark contrast to the years spent under the stage lights. The lack of information about his personal reflections or attempts at rehabilitation left many questions unanswered. Jacob Hoggard rose to fame in Canada as the lead singer of the pop-rock band Headley, a group he helped form in 2003. Born on July 9, 1984 in Surrey, British Columbia, Hoggard displayed early musical aspirations, learning piano and guitar in his teens. At 19, he auditioned for the second season of Canadian Idol. While his singing honestly wasn't very good,
ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Take your protein pills and put your helmet on. Don't wanna close my eyes. I don't want to fall asleep. I still miss you, baby, and I don't wanna miss a thing. 'Cause even when I dream of you, sweetest dream will never do. I still miss you, baby. I don't wanna miss a thing. Put your head on my shoulder, hold me in your arms, baby. Squeeze me oh so tight, show me.
His energetic performance and confident stage presence made up for it and propelled him to a third-place finish in 2004. That exposure introduced him to a national audience and gave him a springboard to pursue a full-time music career. Shortly after his stint on Canadian Idol, Hoggard regrouped with his friends to officially launch Headley. The band released its self-titled debut album in 2005, featuring songs like On My Own and Trip. These tracks found significant airtime on Canadian radio thanks to their anthemic choruses and Hoggard's distinct vocal delivery. The band's blend of pop-punk and rock sensibilities garnered them a passionate fanbase, which grew steadily with each subsequent album. By the late 2000s, Headley had multiple platinum records, frequent appearances at award shows, and a busy touring schedule across Canada. Hoggard acted as the band's frontman and main songwriter, steering their sound in a direction that's often combined catchy hooks with upbeat production. Albums such as Famous Last Words and The Show Must Go further cemented their status as a dominant presence in the Canadian music scene. During this period, Headley picked up numerous honours at the Much Music Video Awards and the Juno Awards. Media outlets frequently showcased Hoggard's charisma and outgoing personality, painting him as a dynamic entertainer with an unwavering drive for performing on stage. As the 2010s continued, Hedley maintained a strong chart presence. The band headlined major tours, filling arenas and often interacting closely with fans. Music videos and behind-the-scenes footage portrayed Hoggard as both jovial and hard-working, qualities that seemed to endear him to a broad demographic. Despite a decade of success, serious accusations against Hoggard came to light in early 2018. Multiple women alleged that they had been subjected to inappropriate conduct and sexual misconduct during encounters with him. The allegations spanned several years, with some women claiming they were underage at the time of the incidents. Under public pressure and scrutiny, Hedley announced an indefinite hiatus and withdrew from any upcoming promotional activities. The band's members posted statements on social media denying any wrongdoing, but acknowledged the need for reflection and a step back from their professional schedule. The situation escalated in 2018 when Toronto police charged Hoggard with 2 counts of sexual assault causing bodily harm. One was a teenager at the time of the alleged incident, while the other was an adult. Hoggard pleaded not guilty, setting the stage for a high-profile trial. The legal proceedings took place over several years, delayed by various procedural matters. During this time, Hoggard remained out of the public spotlight, making occasional court appearances. Journalists followed each stage of the case, providing updates on witness testimonies, cross-examinations, and the arguments made by Hoggard's defense counsel. In 2022, Hoggard's trial reached a verdict. A jury found him guilty of 1 count of sexual assault causing bodily harm against the adult complainant, and not guilty on charges related to the younger complainant. The guilty verdict carried potential prison time. The testimony detailed a graphic account of force and non-consensual contact, leaving a profound impact on those who followed the case. Throughout the proceedings, Hoggard maintained that the encounter in question was consensual. The sentencing took place several months later. The judge handed down a sentence of 5 years in prison, underscoring the severity of the offence. Hoggard's legal team vowed to appeal, arguing errors in the trial process. As of the most recent developments, he is appealing the conviction, and the court has yet to issue a final resolution. With the conviction, Hedley's previous accomplishments have largely faded from the conversation. Music channels and radio stations across Canada pulled much of Hedley's catalogue from playlists in the wake of the allegations, a move mirrored by certain streaming services. The band had previously been a mainstay on the Canadian touring circuit and award show scene, but neither they nor Hoggard have returned to active public performances or promotions. Throughout his career, Hoggard was repeatedly praised for his energetic stage presence and knack for crafting radio-friendly hits. Hedley's discography featured multiple platinum-certified albums and high view-count music videos. For a time, they stood as one of Canada's most recognizable pop rock acts, bringing mainstream appeal with enough edge to attract younger audiences. Ultimately, Hoggard's conviction and the surrounding allegations overshadowed those achievements. This downfall illustrates how significant a role Hoggard played in shaping Hedley's image and success. Before the legal troubles, his name was inseparable from the band. Now, with him no longer appearing in the public eye, the group's standing has disintegrated, leaving behind a complicated record of widespread popularity and disturbing criminal proceedings. No new music or official statements have come from Hedley's remaining members following the trial. The future of the band remains unclear, and Hoggard's legal status hinges on the outcome of the appeals process. Whatever occurs in the coming years, the events that led to his conviction stand as the definitive turning points in a career, one celebrated on Canadian radio and award show stages. Iced Earth is known for 2 things, being one of the premier US power metal bands and for founding member and bandleader John Schaefer's involvement in the January 6th Capitol attack of 2021. Even though by all accounts John was literally just there, wielding a bottle of water, I know how you wanted me to say that because I'm British, and a can of bear spray. This somehow got him 3 years probation, 120 hours community service, and a $1,200 fine. Obviously, John isn't ever going to be on a list like this for something like that. And if you think he belongs on here, you have a very strange idea of what evil is. Anyway, the next evil musician I'm talking about was a member of Iced Earth, but information on him is few and far between. I know he's from Maryland in the US, and that before Iced Earth he was the lead singer and guitarist for a band called Naughty Naughty, and that apparently none of the other members of that band ever did anything else according to Metal Archives. Ernie Carletti came into the band during a rather rocky period. Their iconic frontman, Matt Barlow, had left the band in 2003 and was replaced by former Judas Priest vocalist Tim Ripper Owens. The band was also without a second guitarist for a while, and that's where Ernie Carletti comes in. There's no information on how he joined the band. I don't know whether he already knew John Schaefer or if there was an audition, but he was hired in 2006 and he'd be fired from the band that same year when he would be charged for a truly horrific offense. On May 23, 2003, 19-year-old University of Delaware student Kristen Balmer was attending a party to celebrate the end of classes. After having 2 beers, she decided to leave at 1:30 a.m. and called a friend to accompany her home. She waited outside for her friend to arrive. While Kristen was waiting, a dark-colored sedan pulled up and the driver propositioned her, offering $100 if she would put on handcuffs. She refused, but he persisted. Eventually, the driver displayed what appeared to be a chrome handgun and pulled Balmer into the car. Once she was in the passenger seat, the driver blindfolded her with duct tape, handcuffed her hands behind her back, and shackled her ankles. He then drove for around 25 minutes, after which Balmer was forced out of the car and then dragged into a house. I can't go into detail about what happened next, but Balmer was repeatedly violated, all while handcuffed and unable to fight back. The attacker eventually took Balmer from the house, still bound, shackled, handcuffed, and blindfolded, and put her back in the car. On the way to the campus, he apologized to her, but told her not to tell anyone. He then removed the ankle shackles and handcuffs, securing her hands behind her with duct tape, and pushed her out of the car. Balmer started to scream for help, tore herself out of the tape, and ran back to her dorm room and notified police. Police collected fingerprint samples from the duct tape and determined that the fingerprints belonged to none other than Ernie Carletti, and also discovered that he had owned a dark sedan, matching the one described by Balmer. On September 18, 2006, Carletti was arrested and charged with 6 counts of rape in the first degree, 1 count of kidnapping, and 1 count of possession of a deadly weapon. Once Carletti was arrested, he was of course kicked out of Iced Earth. Though John Schaefer did have this to say when news broke out: "I am in complete shock, and I find it very hard to believe to be true. At this point, I have to believe him innocent until proven guilty. I urge all others to remember that this is our way, the way of a free society. If at some point the facts prove otherwise, then I will address it accordingly." On November 13, 2007, Carletti was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree rape and 1 count of first-degree kidnapping, and was sentenced to 33 years in prison. Since his first band folded after 1 album, and because his time in Iced Earth was so short that he didn't record anything with them or even perform live with them, Ernie Carletti's legacy as a musician is virtually non-existent, and now he will only ever be known as the monster who kidnapped an innocent college student and put her through an experience that she will unfortunately carry these scars from for the rest of her life.
Tie me kangaroo down, sport. Tie me kangaroo down. Tie me kangaroo down, sport. Tie me kangaroo down.
Grab that position about there. That's good. Yeah. That's good.
Rolf, I know that the Australians aren't affected by hierarchy and things like that, but I did notice that you kissed Sir Jim's ring when he came in. Is this an exception for you?
It was somewhere for the bishop.
Yeah, I mean, we go back a long time. What was it, several weeks ago, wasn't it, when we first met?
Several weeks, yeah.
You've been playing your records a long time, though.
Well, we played a couple of them over the years in the 60s.
1,000 times have I played.
Yeah.
Don't Be Cruel, Blue Suede Shoes.
Yes.
All those things of this young man.
May I present that to you, Sir James? Is
Oh.
it Sir James or Sir Jimmy?
No, it's Jimmy today.
Sir Jimmy.
Yeah, today's fee dictates it's Jimmy. Sir James comes a lot more expensive.
Oh, I see. I didn't know they were giving you a fee on this.
My goodness gracious.
What do you think of that?
I have never been...
Well, you've never looked at it yet. What are you talking about? Or you're watching it upside down?
I'm
Sorry.
looking at it upside down. I've got Antipodean eyes and I can see it upside down. What do I see? I see strong character lines. I see liquid brown eyes. I see the firm jutting chin. All together makes
nothing like
a horrible sight.
Oh, there's a lot of bluffers in this game, I'll tell you. Rolf Harris, what the fucking hell can that man do? My mother thinks he's a painter and decorator. Tie me kangaroo down. What's all that about, the dirty bastards? What's all that about? Tying kangaroos down. 2 little boys. What the fucking hell's going on? Hey!
Rolf Harris emerged as one of the most recognizable entertainers of the 20th century, a figure whose talents spanned music, art, and television. Born on March 30th, 1930 in Perth, Western Australia, Harris was the son of Cromwell Harris, a Welsh migrant, and Agnes Margaret, who hailed from Australia. His early years were marked by a blend of athleticism and artistic curiosity. As a teenager, he excelled in swimming, becoming the Australian junior backstroke champion at the age of 16. In 1952, at the age of 22, Harris ventured to London with aspirations of furthering his education in art. He enrolled at the City and Guilds of London Art School, immersing himself in the vibrant post-war British art scene. The move to London transformed his outlook. Art school beckoned, but so did the city's variety halls. At a time when television was bursting into the mainstream, he managed to carve a niche by merging comedic tunes, painting demonstrations, and oddball props. Where other performers might do a straight monologue or juggling act, Harris painted live on canvas while telling jokes. His wobble board, a piece of hardboard that bent and twanged with percussive effect, became the whimsical sound that accompanied so many of his songs. Audiences found it quirky, different from the usual guitar and piano approach, and soon producers began giving him more airtime. In 1953, he was offered a job drawing cartoons live on a BBC program called Jigsaw, which catered to children. This opportunity showcased his ability to engage with young audiences, a talent that would become a hallmark of his career. Harris's warmth and approachable demeanour made him a natural on screen, and he soon became a fixture on children's television. The 1960 release of Tie Me Kangaroo Down Sport marked a significant milestone in Harris's musical career. The song, which he wrote and performed, featured a catchy melody and playful lyrics referencing Australian culture. Accompanied by the unique sound of the wobble board, the song climbed the charts in the UK, Australia, and even reached number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the United States, though the original 1960 single version disappeared fairly quickly due to one verse in the song being considered racially insensitive to Australian Aborigines.
Let me abbas go loose, Lou. Let me abbas go loose. They're of no further use, Lou, so let me abbas go loose.
The success of this track not only solidified his status as a musician, but also introduced international audiences to a whimsical interpretation of Australian life. Throughout the 1960s, Harris continued to produce music that blended humour with storytelling. Songs like Sun Arise, released in 1960, which was inspired by Aboriginal music and co-written with Harris Butler, demonstrated his interest and respect for Indigenous Australian culture, even though he also wrote that aforementioned verse in Tie Me Kangaroo Down Sport. This track also enjoyed chart success and showcased Harris's versatility as a musician capable of crossing genres. It was also covered by Alice Cooper of all bands, if you can believe that.
Sunrise, come every morning. Sunrise, come every morning.
In addition to his musical endeavours, Harris expanded his television presence. The Rolf Harris Show, which aired from 1967 to 1974 on the BBC, was a variety program that combined music, art demonstrations, and guest performances. Harris often involved the studio audience and viewers at home in his artistic creations. His ability to draw complex images rapidly while engaging in conversation became one of his trademarks. The phrase, "Can you tell what it is yet?" became synonymous with his on-screen persona, inviting audiences into the creative process. Harris's talents were not confined to the small screen. In the 1970s, he hosted several television specials and appeared on programs in the United States. Expanding his international appeal, his art exhibitions, featuring portraits and landscapes, received critical acclaim. One of the pinnacles of his artistic recognition came when he was commissioned to paint an official portrait of Queen Elizabeth II in 2005. The project was documented in a BBC television special titled The Queen by Rolf, which provided an intimate look at the process of capturing the likeness of the monarch. The painting was unveiled to a mix of reactions, but was significant as it underscored Harris's esteemed position within British culture.
I think so, yes. I've got that reference photo, which will be just perfect for all the background and for your face. I'd just like to take this opportunity of thanking you on behalf of the whole crew. Thank you so much.
I think it looks very nice. It's friendly anyway.
Yes, that was my main aim
Well, that's very clever, I think.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much once again from us all.
That's fun. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Success.
Harris was also known for his involvement in educational programming. He hosted Rolf's Cartoon Club from 1989 to 1993, a television show that encouraged children to engage with drawing and animation. His approachable teaching style and enthusiasm for art inspired a generation of young viewers to explore their creativity. Additionally, he participated in environmental campaigns and supported various charities, further cementing his image as a benevolent public figure. In the early 2000s, he also collaborated several times with the Wiggles.
Big news, everybody! We've just been joined by our friend Rolf Harris. Let's all say g'day, Rolf. G'day, Rolf.
G'day, Anthony. G'day.
Rolf, I can see you're holding something very interesting there. What is it?
Oh, this is my wobble board.
Wobble board? Ah, that sounds very musical. What do you do with a wobble board?
Well, if you wobble it, it makes this fantastic sound. Check this.
Wow, that's a great sound. Rolf, a question. Have you ever thought about using the wobble board in a song?
Yeah, I've written a song called Tie Me Kangaroo Down Sport.
That sounds like a fun song. Why don't we all sing Tie Me Kangaroo Down Sport with Rolf?
Good idea.
However, the facade of the affable entertainer began to crumble in the early 2010s. In the wake of revelations about widespread historical sexual abuse by public figures in the UK, particularly following the Jimmy Savile scandal, the Metropolitan Police launched Operation Newtree in 2012. This investigation aimed to uncover and address allegations of sexual offences committed by prominent individuals at the BBC. In November 2012, Harris was first questioned by police, but was not publicly named. It wasn't until his arrest in March 2013 that his identity became known in connection with the investigation. The charges brought against him were serious: indecent assault and making indecent images of children. The allegations spanned several decades, with incidents as far back as the 1960s. His trial commenced in May 2014 at Southwark Crown Court in London. During the proceedings, the court heard testimonies from several women who accused Harris of abusing them when they were young girls. One of the most harrowing accounts came from a childhood friend of Harris's daughter, who claimed that he had sexually abused her from the age of 13. The prosecution portrayed Harris as a manipulative predator who exploited his fame and the trust placed in him by families and fans. Harris denied all of the charges, but the evidence presented painted a damning picture. The jury found him guilty on 12 counts of indecent assault involving 4 victims. On July 14, 2014, he was sentenced to 5 years and 9 months in prison. The judge condemned Harris for showing no remorse and for having, quote, no one to blame but himself. The conviction sent shockwaves through the public, as the man who had been a beloved figure for decades was revealed to have committed heinous acts. The consequences were swift and severe. Harris was stripped of his honours. His artwork was also removed from galleries, and institutions distanced themselves from any association with him. Television network pulled his shows from their schedules, and his music largely disappeared from airwaves. In 2017, while serving his sentence, Harris faced a second trial on additional charges of indecent assault. However, the jury failed to reach verdicts on these charges, and they were ultimately left on file. During this time, one of his previous convictions from the 2014 trial was overturned on appeal, reducing his number of convictions from 12 to 11. Harris was released from prison in May 2017, after serving nearly 3 years. After his release, Harris retreated into a life of seclusion, avoiding public appearances and living in Bray, Berkshire with his wife, Alwyn Hughes, whom he married in 1958. Hughes, who had been wheelchair-bound in her later years, remained by his side despite the revelations and public scrutiny. Harris was occasionally spotted in public near his home, often using a walking frame due to declining health. In one notable incident after his release, Harris made headlines in 2019 when he was reported to have entered the grounds of a primary school near his home. Witnesses said he was talking to children through the school's fence and playing with a pet dog belonging to one of the students. The school immediately contacted authorities, and although no laws were broken, the incident reignited public outrage and added to his infamy. As his health deteriorated, Harris remained largely out of the public spotlight. In his final years, he was rarely seen, with reports indicating that he had been battling neck cancer. He died on May 10, 2023, at the age of 93. The man who once dominated multiple branches of popular entertainment had been reduced to a figure of contempt and scorn, a footnote to remember only as an example of how easily trust and admiration can be abused. There would be no grand attempt at legacy restoration, no comeback specials, no heartfelt interviews to explain himself. He slipped away quietly, leaving behind uncomfortable questions and the bitter recollection of how he had once convinced everyone that he was their benevolent guide, only to be unmasked as something quite the opposite.
But sometimes people do things to one another which don't make them feel good. Now, you know the sort of touch that makes you feel good? It's a yes feeling. It feels really good. And other touches give you a no feeling. It's like, no, I don't know why I don't like that, but I'm not too sure about that at all. I don't want that to keep going. I want that to stop. That's a no feeling. Just because he's a grown-up does not mean that you have to do what he says. You could say, go away, please. You know, some people, especially grown-ups, they just don't listen. They don't pay any attention to you, don't take any notice unless you actually come out and say, no, please stop. There are good secrets, but there are bad secrets, and they want you to keep a bad secret. It's a secret that could hurt other children because they might play those same games with those other children. Sometimes grown-ups just don't listen to kids, or they don't believe you. They say rubbish, or they say, how can you tell such lies, you wicked child, or how dare you say something like that. You've just got to keep trying until someone believes you. You could always take your dolly and you could use that to point out to your mummy where you were actually touched, where you didn't want to be touched. Or you could draw a picture and you could point out on the picture where you were touched. Remember our song, my body's nobody's body but mine. You run your own body. Let me run mine. Say no. You've got to learn to trust your own feelings.
Ricky Lamar Hawke, better known by his stage name Silento, entered the spotlight almost overnight. Back in early 2015, he was just a young artist from Atlanta trying to make a name for himself. He recorded a track called Watch Me Whip /Nay Nay, a playful dance-driven number with a repetitive hook and a straightforward call and response format. It's also very annoying.
You already know what it is. Watch me, ooh, watch me. Do the stanky leg, do the stanky leg, do the stanky leg.
It spread fast, initially through social media platforms, where short dance clips were taking over. The song's simplicity and catchy refrain caught on with millions of listeners. School kids and celebrities were filming themselves performing the signature moves, filling timelines and feeds everywhere. The track went on to peak at number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100, turning the then teenage Silento into a household name, at least for a moment. He performed at award shows and on morning television, making appearances that positioned him as a bright-eyed newcomer with a hit strong enough to cement him as a cultural reference point. But, as is often the case with viral music hits, replicating that success proved difficult. After Watch Me reached saturation, Silento tried releasing other singles and projects, hoping to sustain the interest that song had generated. Although he continued putting out music, none of it reached anywhere near the same level of popularity. His name still drew some attention, but it became less and less frequent to see him in mainstream coverage, and he seemed to fade into the background as newer trends and sensations took over. In the years following his breakthrough, Silento's public appearances became more sporadic, occasionally popping up at smaller events or on social media, but the sense of initial excitement had long since worn off. Then, reports began surfacing about troubling behavior. In 2020, he faced legal issues unrelated to his music, including arrests over alleged domestic incidents. These situations didn't dominate headlines the way his music once had, but they did suggest a shift in the narrative around him, from the once fresh-faced entertainer to someone wrestling with serious personal problems. The real shock came in early 2021. On February 1st, Silento was arrested in DeKalb County, Georgia. According to police, he was accused of shooting and killing his 34-year-old cousin, Frederick Rooks. On January 21st, authorities found Rooks with multiple gunshot wounds, and after reviewing residential security footage and other evidence, they identified Silento as a suspect. He was taken into custody, and as details emerged, People struggled to square the image of the young artist who once urged everyone to dance along to a light-hearted track with the grim reality of a murder charge. As the case developed, it became clear that this was more than a misunderstanding or minor offense. In August 2021, Silento was indicted on charges that included malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. Court documents painted a picture of a far graver situation than anything previously associated with him. While he had pleaded not guilty, the indictment and the severity of the accusations indicates that the legal battle ahead would be lengthy and complicated. The stark contrast between the cheerful dance-focused music video that catapulted him to fame and the allegations of deadly violence was jarring. With the legal proceedings ongoing, Silento spent the next period in custody, and all talk of new music, performances, or promotional appearances fell by the wayside. The industry and fans who remembered Watch Me as a defining moment in the 2010s viral culture now saw his name mentioned primarily in connection with court dates, legal filings, and pre-trial hearings. Any conversation around his career was overshadowed by the murder case. Publications that once praised his ability to spark a dance craze were now reporting on bail hearings, mental health evaluations, and potential sentencing outcomes. While his ultimate fate depends on the outcome of the trial and judicial proceedings, what had already happened was enough to rewrite the story of his career. The era of Watch Me seemed like a distant past, a relic of a time when his future looked full of opportunities. Now, with a murder indictment hanging over him, Silento's name became tied to the kind of headlines that no public figure ever wants to see next to theirs. Over the course of a few short years, Silento's journey had taken him from one-hit wonder status to a defendant facing serious prison time. His early career had shown him as a young artist with a singular moment of fame. Later revelations and the criminal charges leveled against him painted an entirely different picture, one of a fallen public figure, now known as much for the alleged violent act as for the music that made him famous in the first place. Bard Goldvik Ethon, aka Faust's involvement with Emperor and the Norwegian black metal scene reached beyond music into territory many would never have imagined at the time. Born on April 21st, 1974, he grew up in a small Norwegian community before making his way into an underground network of extreme musicians, fanzines, and record collectors. By the late 1980s, black metal was still a tight-knit movement, centered around a small circle of individuals who were trading tapes, developing their own mythologies, and forging a style defined by speed, harsh vocals, and a raw, unforgiving sound. Faust, still a teenager, found this environment intoxicating. He loved the intensity, the refusal to bow down to mainstream sensibilities, and the shared belief that this was something larger than entertainment, something that felt, at least to them, like a cultural shift. When Emperor formed in 1991, the lineup included Isan and Samoth, who had been experimenting with various musical ventures and honing a signature approach that balanced fierce aggression with eerie atmospheric keyboards. Faust joined not long after, becoming part of what would soon be recognized as one of the most inventive bands in black metal's early history. Before Emperor recorded their debut album, they were known locally for blistering rehearsals and a handful of rough releases. Faust's drumming on these early recordings wasn't just about speed, though that was certainly a factor. It was also about unpredictability. He integrated unusual patterns and a sense of menace that matched the feverish guitar work and shrieking vocals. Each member of Emperor brought something distinct to the table, and Faust's contribution was a dynamic, forceful rhythm section that never settled into a dull groove. The environment surrounding Emperor was anything but peaceful. Norway's black metal scene at the time included not only musicians, but also individuals who were interested in pushing boundaries off stage. A climate of hostility toward organized religion led to a rash of church burnings. Musicians and hangers-on alike dabbled in controversial imagery, corpse paint, animalistic stage get-ups, and references to occultism and misanthropy. Faust had a front-row seat to these developments. The record shop, Helvet in Oslo, was a gathering place for many central figures, and Faust spent considerable time there, soaking up the emerging ethos and forging relationships that would define his early adulthood. On August 21st, 1992, Faust crossed a line that would forever eclipse any artistic legacy he might have hoped to leave behind. While walking in Lillehammer late at night, he was approached by Magna Andresen. Accounts suggest that Andresen, who was intoxicated, made a sexual advance. Faust responded by persuading Andresen to follow him into a nearby wooded area, where he proceeded to stab him multiple times. The killing was vicious and offered no apparent motive beyond a moment of violent impulse. At the time, no one in the scene knew what he had done. He returned to Oslo the next morning and carried on as if nothing had happened. Andresen's murder went unsolved for nearly a year, leaving authorities baffled and the community uneasy without fully realizing why. During that period, Emperor pressed forward. They entered the studio to record what would become In the Nightside Eclipse. Widely regarded as a milestone in black metal, the music they created stood apart from much of their contemporaries' output. It was ornate, layered with synthesizers, and graced with a sense of grandeur that stretched beyond the genre's primitive beginnings. Faust's drumming on that album was relentless and precise, pushing the compositions forward and accenting them with blasts of sudden aggression. He recorded these parts knowing full well what he had done back in Lillehammer, never confiding in his bandmates. His involvement in the murder remained a terrible secret, with no sign in the studio sessions that something so grim lurked behind the scenes. Meanwhile, the black metal scene's reputation deteriorated as more incidents piled up: church arsons, intense rivalries, and escalating personal conflicts. The police took a keener interest in the subculture when Varg Vikernes of Burzum was arrested in August 1993 for the murder of Mayhem's guitarist Euronymous. A spotlight fell on everyone connected to the scene. Investigators, combing through known associates and participants in Oslo's black metal underground, eventually uncovered evidence pointing to Faust's role in Andresen's murder. Arrested in 1994, Faust confessed. The trial brought the truth out into the open, shocking those who had no idea that one of Emperor's own had committed such an act. He received a 14-year prison sentence. Norwegian law often focuses more on rehabilitation than long incarceration, so even a 14-year sentence was considered lengthy within that system. While he sat behind bars, Emperor released In the Nightside Eclipse, followed by other influential records, but the drummer who had helped shape their earliest sound was absent. Faust's absence did not halt Emperor's progress, but it stained their history. Interviews from that era hint of confusion, regret, and a degree of disbelief among those left behind. Faust served 9 years before being released in 2003. When he emerged, the black metal scene he had once helped build had changed. Many bands had matured, shifted directions, or broken up. Younger generations of fans learned about Faust's involvement in Emperor and the murder through documentaries, magazines, and internet forums. He played the drums again with other groups, including Blood Tsunami and Scum, taking smaller roles and performing mostly in Europe. Though no longer in the eye of a cultural storm, his name still carried the weight of what he had done. Concertgoers who had recognized him knew the story, and it clung to him even if he seldom spoke about it publicly. Any claim to mystique or creativity could not blot out the act that defined him off stage. Faust remains a figure who played a vital role in one of black metal's defining albums, yet the fact always comes paired with the grim knowledge of a murder committed in a dark forest decades ago. It's impossible to discuss his drumming or his place in Emperor's early lineup without acknowledging the violence that changed everything. His attempts at moving on in the music world, his subsequent work in other bands, and his efforts to live quietly after prison never fully erased that night in Lillehammer. Those who delve into black metal's origins inevitably stumble upon Faust's name, confronted not only with the music he recorded, but also the brutal crime that will forever overshadow the beats he once laid down behind the drum kit.